And we are live. We have Cribl TV today. It's very exciting, great weather. Glad to be here. So, Ed Bailey from Cribl with Ross Haleliuk from Vista Angels. Great to have you here. Thank you very much. Could you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm Ross. I'm a head of product at Lima Charlie, author at ventureinsecurity.net, and as of recently, the lead of Venture in Security Angel Syndicate.
That's awesome. I can't wait to talk about that in a second. So, what are you doing today? How's the weather where you are?
The weather is fantastic. It did snow. It did snow a tiny bit yesterday. I'm in Vancouver, Canada, but yeah, not too bad. Quite warm despite everything.
I can't beat it. I'm in Atlanta. It's springtime. I think it's 75 degrees, clear skies. You can't beat it. No snow, that's for sure.
I envy you. I would prefer some clear skies, but it will get better.
Definitely. Hey, and thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate it. So, just for everyone, we're going to talk about Ross has an announcement to make, and then we're going to talk about shared values that we think that need to be in the cybersecurity industry. We're also going to talk about some of the trends we're seeing, especially around the pain so many of companies or engineers are experiencing, and the things that Cribl and Ross wants to do in order to try to solve these problems. So, in the interest of just not boring everyone to death, I'm going to bring up just a quick slide. So, Ross, can you go ahead and make your announcement, please?
Yeah, I'm super happy to announce the launch of Venture in Security Angel Syndicate. So we made an official announcement last week. Now we are live. There is still a lot of paperwork and a lot of admin work to do in order for us to actually start making some bets on great cybersecurity companies. But it's live, it's happening, and I'm super excited to be in this place.
That's great. What type of companies are you looking to target? I mean, what's the impetus that's driving the creation of your syndicate?
Yeah, so I think there are two main reasons. There are two main drivers. Like on one hand, you see that more and more cybersecurity professionals are gaining a stronger voice in the purchasing process. Not only that, but while CISOs and heads of security are tasked to work with boards, to work with leadership team, to work and evangelize security across different departments and to really build that trust and build relationships across the company, security professionals are the ones who are really being hands-on at different tools, who are looking at what are the new trends in the space, like what are the emerging threats, like what are some of the things that they should be paying attention to. And so it's the technical security practitioners that are the ones, in my view, who define the future of the industry more so than all the other participants. And then on the other side, you have cybersecurity startup founders who often need, especially at the very, very early stage, who need some support, who need some advice, who need some, like somebody from the practitioner space, like somebody with the understanding of the fundamentals of security and how different tools work. What are the different problems in this space, to help them, whether it is to understand what the problems are, or to really build the product, get feedback about the product, and so on and so forth. And it's those two problems that when brought together, you really start seeing the need for something like the practitioner focused Angel Syndicate.
I think that's a great idea. I mean, that's something I've really appreciated about Cribl, the idea of focusing on engineers, architects, their pain, how do we solve their pain, and still have that translate to business value. And I think that we need more investors like yourself who are willing to put their dollars behind companies who are trying to sustain those values. I mean, I think that's great news.
I think we need more practitioner focus in the industry. There has been a lot of talk about the fact that security practitioners are often sick and tired of having to spend hours and hours of their time attending demos, having to spend like hours and hours of their time trying to get their hands onto the technical documentation, which often does not even exist. So it's I think the more we can prioritize the interest and the needs of the security practitioners who are looking for full control over their security posture, who are looking for the visibility into their environment, who are looking for solving their technical problems. And really, that's where I feel like Lima Charlie, like Venture in Security Angel Syndicate, Cribl, and a lot of the other companies in this space are starting to pioneer this approach.
Yeah, I agree, and that's I mean, and it's when you've been that engineer and architect for so long, like I have, documentation, for example, not having gated documentation. I can't tell you how many times I've needed to look up the documentation. I need an account. I need a license code. I need to go to my salesperson to get access to documentation. It's infuriating. Something like education, getting access to easy to use, available education is critical. Yet, for a lot of companies, more established companies, that education is a separate P&L. They're looking to make money off you and your education, and so I think those are critical things. And and it's just we need more of it. I can't say that enough.
We do, and I
Mhm.
think there has to be a push from the practitioners as well. Like
Right.
the more people can make their voices heard, the more likely it is that companies will start to listen. And to me, one of the ways to make those voices heard is to bring security practitioners together and enable them, like make it easy for them to make bets on companies they believe in, on companies that they think should exist in the industry.
Yeah, and that's awesome. Definitely gonna take a look at that. And I think that's something that's important is practitioner focus that also realizes that business value. Because I think that if leaders see that I can make my people happy and solve my business problems at the same time, they're more likely than ever to support that point of view.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it really is something. I mean, it's just those are I'm just glad to see it. I've seen too much in the IT industry, then it's just in hard to use UIs, as I said, education, docs, just friction that just doesn't need to be there. So I'm glad to see that's what you're looking to do. And so just go back to is people who aren't exactly aware. So what is an angel syndicate? How is that different from a typical angel fund or a typical VC fund?
Yeah, so that is a great question, and frankly, also an important one because there is indeed a lot of misunderstanding and a lot of
Mhm.
confusion around all of those terms that kind of tend to blend together. There is the angels, like individual angels, angel syndicates, VC firms, private equity firms. Like there are many different players in this space, and so uh, angel syndicates are essentially communities of people that come together to pool their own money, their own capital, and invest in companies they believe in. So in this case, the role of a syndicate is to really like gather people together and offer them an option, or essentially offer them a list of companies that they can look at and say, hey, you know what, I'm interested in this one. Like it solves the problems that I believe are important. I'm willing to back it with my own capital. And so what angel syndicates do uniquely in the industry is that they make angel investing accessible. So while in the past, you know, you would need it to be like you needed to be a multi-millionaire for
Yeah,
you to be able to say, okay, here is 100,000, here is 500,000. Like I want
right.
to back this company. What angel syndicates do is make it accessible to to people, obviously at a certain like to people who are qualified, who are accredited investors, uh, and the bets, the investment amounts itself can be as low as like $2,000 to $3,000 per deal. So you can say, like, let's just say if Cribl or if Lima Charlie, if any other startup were at, let's just say, a pre-seed seed stage, a security practitioner that looks at their vision, looks at what they do, really, you know, potentially even tries their product and develops this conviction that, hey, this is something that really needs to exist in the industry. A security practitioner could then say, you know what, like I want to put in like 5K into this company. I believe in it. So uh, venture capital firms are quite different. So a VC firm typically goes to institutional investors, goes to like family offices, banks, like large financial institutions, raises a lot of capital, and then the people, like the founders of the VC firm or the partners of the VC firm running it, they're the ones making a decision into what companies they're looking to invest. In the angel syndicate model, it works entirely differently. So the angel syndicate lead uh, sources companies, it proposes companies to the membership saying that, hey, like look at this company. If this is something that matches your criteria, if this is something that you're interested in, you're free to make an investment, to make a bet on this specific company. But again, there is no commitment. It's offered as an option for people to evaluate, make up their own mind, and if they choose to do so, and if they believe that that is the right investment, again, based on their criteria, based on their needs, they can make that choice.
That's a really interesting concept because it gives the individual the ability to get in on an early stage company at a very affordable rate, which potentially could really pay off.
I mean, let's be transparent.
Yeah.
In most cases, the early stage startups fail. So
Oh yeah, I mean, it's a small percentage, but if you get it right, you get it right.
I mean, the way
Yeah.
I think about it, it's more about optionality and it's more about the
Mhm.
value add. Like
Right.
I think about the angel syndicates and the value of this model in that it enables security professionals to get closer to where the innovation happens, to work closer with founders, and to help shape how they believe the industry should look like. To me, it is clear that if we want the future of the industry to look different, we need to fund companies that are trying to do things differently. Like if we
Could not agree more.
like
So
if
what
we yeah yeah
so I want to ask, so at what stage of a company is an angel investor getting involved? Is it early, middle, late?
So typically where angels can add the most value is at the early stage when, like in terms of traditional funding rounds, I would say pre-seed, seed, but in terms of the life cycle of the company, it is when the founders are, they may have an idea, they may have built an MVP. Sometimes they don't even have an MVP. They're looking to validate if a thing they believe is a problem is indeed a problem. At other times, there is already an MVP, there is some early revenue, but there is also a need to refine the product. There is a need to better understand like what are some of the other use cases they can tap into. So it's at that stage that angels in particular are most useful because uh, they do not come, like the value add doesn't really come from the capital. The value add comes from having like 25, 35, 50 security people come together and say, hey, listen, like we really believe believe that what Cribl does needs to exist in the industry, and we are willing to provide it with the kind of support that company founders need for them to build a product that solves a real problem. It's this solving the real problem that's really important.
Right, and especially being an influence early on. I imagine early stage founders, they value the advice as much as they value the advice and feedback as much as they value the capital.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And at the early stage, I would argue quite often that the value of the advice can be much, much higher than the value of the capital. Like again, you might not necessarily have the money to do something, or at least you might have less money than you would like to. But if you have the right people, like if you have the champions in the community, if you have people who go to B-sides, who go to Black Hat, who go to DEF CON, who go to different conferences and talk about the problem you're solving, who talk to their friends about the fact that hey, they've installed your tool in their home lab and it seems to be working well. It is solving the problem that it is solving the pain, like this terrible pain that they had. Like that's the real value. It's this evangelism in the community and also helping to build the actual product.
Right. And I think that feedback is important too. It's very hard, I think, as a founder to understand, am I solving a real problem? And getting feedback from a syndicate of professionals, I think would be very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So it's feedback. It's capital in some form, but much less so. And also because the average check size that an angel syndicate is able to write is much smaller than wherever a large VC fund is typically writing. But when you
Right.
think about the fundraising process, when a startup goes to the market saying, "Hey, I am looking for somebody to help fund what I'm building," it typically approaches multiple different types of investors, multiple different companies. And so they would get a small check from an angel syndicate, then a couple of small checks from individual angels, and often like a large amount of money from a VC firm. So it's all complementary. It all comes together in a very complementary way.
But what's the typical time horizon? So, say I invest, $5,000 in an early startup. What's the time horizon for you start to see if it succeeds, you start seeing a payback?
I mean, frankly, like when it comes to investments, it's really a tricky question because like on one hand, I'm a lead of the syndicate. I cannot offer financial advice. I can by no means I can say that hey, the companies we choose to bet on are the right companies for somebody to look at. Like that is absolutely not the message. So instead what we are saying is, listen, here here is the company we've looked at, like myself and a couple of industry professionals who have that technical hands-on knowledge. They've looked at the company and they say that, hey, the problem it is solving, it's a real problem. Based on what we've seen, based on the conversations we had with founders, we believe they do have the ability to execute, they do have the right vision, they are onto something, essentially.
Right.
And because it's an early stage, again, the chances that an early stage startup will fail are much, much, much higher than
Sure.
the chances that it will ever succeed. If it will succeed, well, success can also look like even getting your money back at an early stage can be a success. And hence why you often have people saying that nobody should ever be putting more money into an early stage startup than wherever they're willing to lose. And so that's why the focus is on the accredited investors, on people who are sophisticated enough to know that, hey, this is risky. But when it comes to paybacks, like the timings vary. Like we look at the industry and we see that, like we see yourself, I'm sure you have been observing the same, that some companies get acquired after a year and a half, while others are in the industry for like 7 years and they're struggling to IPO. So it's like I think whenever I think about angel investing in general, I think that people looking to do it should be thinking more about the industry and just pushing the industry forward, helping to promote that long-term thinking for companies that are solving problems that matter, and so on. Like those looking for returns in a classical sense should consult with their financial advisors and see if that is the right approach.
I mean, at best, it's long-term investing. You're not talking about a 10 tiger overnight.
Oh, absolutely. Like we are talking about like at the in the best case scenario, which as we've said does not happen all that often. We are still talking about years and sometimes like a decade or so. Yeah.
All right, that makes lots of sense. I really appreciate it. It's very exciting. So I look forward to following your success. So let's switch over a little bit in terms of, let's talk about some long-term trends you're seeing. What kind of trends you're seeing in the cybersecurity industry right now? Let's specifically talk about what kind of pain are practitioners going through.
I think one of the biggest challenges that I have been observing is that the nature of cybersecurity and what we think of when we say the word security has been changing. There was a time in the industry where, a decade, 2 decades ago, a customer would come to the vendor and say, hey, vendor, give me the box that I can install in my environment, push the red button, activate Shield, and immediately become safe. Like there was that mindset where people believe that security, it's a feature and you can buy it and then and activate it and everything becomes great.
Yeah, I've seen that box, by the way, that literally has a red button on it. So yeah.
Exactly. And so now we are coming to the place where there is a clear understanding that that is not how security works and that is not what security is. So you have to start with understanding of your environment. You have to start with understanding of your company, really gaining the visibility into your own environment, seeing like what is happening, what are the right behaviors, what are the behaviors that are not common and that are potentially questionable in my own environment. And from there, finding a way to detect certain behaviors that should not be happening in that specific environment, knowing exactly how they're being detected, knowing exactly what happens in terms of response whenever they're being detected. So we often say, like when we talk about it at Lima Charlie, and I have heard and read enough about what you guys do to know that we are aligned in terms of this. Whenever we talk about the maturation of the industry, like there is a need for you to gain the visibility into your environment.
Right. It's critical. I mean, telemetry, data, it's foundational for everything. And that if you don't have the right data in your tools, your tools are just not very good. And
Exactly.
I see it over and over again. And this is something to talk about with security. Security is a program. It's a collection of things. There's a lot of people and a lot of process that I don't think really gets the right attention, because frankly, it's too easy to go buy a tool. It's too easy to buy a tool, and all of a sudden we're going to see some results. I had to do it. Had to pull out an old beam, probably one of my favorite ones. But just like this, it's like let's buy a new tool. But but the thing is, you don't have the people to run it, and I think that's so important. And then data, especially with the rise of machine learning, the rise of advanced analytics. Machine learning, advanced analytics doesn't mean a whole lot without good data. And that's one thing that's like work customers over and over again at Cribl is like, how do we collect the telemetry in your environment and get it into the best possible format for your tools? And it's such a painful process.
Yeah, and I see the number one item you've got on the list is the too many vendors, and I think I've actually wrote a fairly comprehensive deep dive in one of my blogs talking about this problem. And I know there is a lot of enthusiasm in the industry, and there is a lot of hope that this big consolidation is going to come tomorrow, and the number of vendors is going to shrink. And to a certain degree, the consolidation has been happening. It is happening today, and it will continue to happen.
Sure.
Having said that, I have developed this conviction that the number of cybersecurity startups is not going to go down. And the reason for that is actually quite simple, and yet the one that is not often being talked about. And it has to do with the way cybersecurity products are adopted. Mm-hmm. You see, in many other industries, a startup can have a great idea, can raise some capital, and then get to market incredibly quickly, because the number of steps they have to go through in order for them to get that initial adoption is not as high. Let's just say if you're building a new marketing tool, you can get it into the hands of the marketing department, and as long as it does what it promises to do, and there is value in it, you can have a fairly quick adoption. In cybersecurity, purchasing process is based on trust. And trust, it is something that is earned over a longer period of time. So, and not only that, but also trust has this localized dimension, whereby a company in the US will very much prefer to work with the startup from the US. A company in Canada will want to have a Canadian startup. A company in Germany will want to have a local security provider, at least to start at an early stage before they have proven that they can be trusted. And so you get into this problem whenever a startup cannot blitz scale. Like you can't just, you can't raise a ton of money, hire a big sales team and just go, because your purchasing process is long, your sales cycle is long. The number of people who are involved in evaluating the tool is long. And so I simply don't see the universe in which a year from now we will have less vendors than what we have today.
And actually, I'm glad, because you mentioned trust, but also then there's vendor lock-in. Something I get really frustrated with as an engineer and architect, that I needed to make changes for my business, but I'm constrained by my vendors. And my vendor says, we don't support these other tools. We don't support getting data out of our data lake. You put data in our data lake, but it doesn't come out. Yeah. And those are the things that I think you have, and it's inevitable for a lot of companies to make business decisions that, okay, we're going to trap you because we want to get all your revenue, instead of expressing the values of choice and control. Yeah. And I think that it's natural. Most businesses are going to do it, but it's just that I think that creates that natural pushback of, I don't like you anymore. I'm going to go find somebody else because you're frustrating me.
Yeah. And cybersecurity is the industry where every single vendor needs to understand that as much as the consolidation is happening, and it will continue to happen, right, there is very unlikely ever gonna be just one vendor that the company will rely on. So there is the need to play nicely with all the other tooling, with all the other products on the market, have an easy way to get the data in, but also have an easy way to get the data out if it needs to go somewhere else.
And that's what I love about Cribl, because that's the whole focus of the company is providing that glue. And I think that that's something that when I was a customer of Cribl, that was a big deal for me, because I had my business units would come to me and says, I need to do this. And I was able to say, yes, if you want to use this same data that we're using in our analytics tool, and you want to use it in your analytics tool, absolutely. Yeah. I'll use Cribl and I'll send you the data. Yeah. And we can do it quickly.
Exactly. And so like that's what really makes me excited, because whenever I go to some conferences, like whenever the Lima Charlie team attend some conferences. Like we often hear about Cribl, we often hear about Times, we often hear about other companies in the space that are also taking this approach. So I almost feel like there has to be, there has to be a movement of some kind of, of companies like ours, and of like the upcoming startups who are saying, hey, things need to be done differently in the industry, and let's push for that difference. Like, let's deal with the vendor lock-in, let's deal with the big black box magic solutions who are making like big claims, and instead give people the visibility, give people the control over their environment, give people the control over their security posture, and do the things that are going to help us mature the industry and push the industry forward together, as opposed to just like hyping up and investing in marketing and selling zero trust, chat GPT enabled NFT, Bitcoin, blockchain, like wherever.
Right. Yeah, if you say enough keywords, eventually someone will pay attention. Oh yeah.
We'll see what the RSA this year is going to bring us.
Oh my God! Last year it was all about XDR. I was like XDR everything. I was like, oh my gosh, come on.
We'll see. And that's like going back, I guess, to the conversation around the Angel Syndicate. Like,
Right.
in order for us to build the future in which security professionals can have the tools they need to have for them to do their job, we need to invest in companies doing things right. And by right, I mean like all of the ideas that we've discussed,
Yeah.
transparency,
Values. Absolutely.
control, value, maturity, like treating people, like treating security professionals like the way they need to be treated, by giving them the tools and giving them the support, as opposed to like treating them as idiots and having like marketing and sales teams convincing them that, hey, like, you don't really need to worry about anything, just deploy this thing, hit a button, and you will be taken care of. It's that level of, I will say, in some ways, respect that we have to have to security professionals who know that that is not what the industry is, and that is not how we future-proof our security posture.
I agree. I think that value is so important. I think one of the things you see when your engineer says, "You mean I can do what I want to do and not what you want to do?" And I think that flexibility, that choice, that control, that it really, and that they've then become a massive advocate for what you're doing because you're enabling their work. And I think that's, you're not enabling your own work, you're enabling their work. I never forget one time I had a vendor change their license on me, and they told me that, because I had planned a massive spend around the type of license, and they said, okay, we just got rid of that license, you have to use a different type of money. I was like, what do you mean? I had all this money that I was going to buy this, and then they tell me we're having revenue recognition problems, so we had to make a change. So you're just like, so you're telling me that you want me to solve your revenue recognition problems and you're not going to solve my problems. I was like, you want me to pay you money for it? I was like, I didn't know what to say. And
I mean, let's be honest. Like, whenever we are talking about the vendor lock-in, that's exactly yet another example of companies solving their problems. Like, they want to retain the customer, they want to prevent churn. But I genuinely feel like in 2023, hoping that somebody will stay with you simply because you've really trapped them, and you're making it incredibly hard for them to get their data out. Like, it should no longer be a reasonable assumption. Unfortunately, it does happen quite often, but it shouldn't.
And I think that's why it's important. It's like what you're doing, what Cribl's doing. You keep pushing those values and make real long-term change in the industry. And I think that's great. That's good for everybody.
Yep. Like the whole industry benefits from the steps that we are all taking, and it's exciting to see what the possibilities are, what the future can look like if we make the right steps today, if we adopt the right tooling today, and most importantly, if we embrace the right values today. Because again, products are just tools. Like, one tool can be like easily exchange with another tool. It's about solving customer problems, and it's about offering value. It's about giving choice. If something solves your problem better, you should be able to go for it.
I recently had a CISO tell me, it's like, so you're going to make this easier for me and you're going to give me value. He says, by the way, I don't often say that about in the security industry. It's like, you're actually going to give me value.
Yeah.
And so, and now is a massive advocate. So it's just, I think it's underrated. I'm glad to see it. So any closing words?
Only excitement about the future and gratitude. Thank you so much, Ed, for allowing me to share the message, for having this amazing conversation, and for the fact that Cribl and many other companies in the industry are pushing like the same message around maturity and helping to make the future better.
This is great. I really appreciate it. I hope you can come back soon. I really enjoy talking about trends in cybersecurity. I think you give a great perspective. So really,
Likewise. Thank you.
thank you. All
Thank
right.
you.
So everyone, thank you for your time. We really appreciate it. If you want to join the Cribl community, it's cribl.io/community. Join our Slack community. We're almost at 6,000 strong. Try out our sandboxes. All of our products are free to use up to 1 terabyte. We want to enable you. We're not going to get in your way. And you engage sales on your own terms. Also, training's free. Can't beat that. So thank you very much. We'll talk to you all on Friday.